Welcome. I'm Matt Kaplan of the College of Continuing and Professional Education at California State University, Long Beach. I'm joined by several of the principals in a project we have called the Transportation Education Development Pilot Program, or TEDPP. Over the next few minutes, they will share some of what we have learned over the course of this very ambitious effort, along with a discussion of why they and our university decided that it was important to take on this challenge. We're going to introduce them, first of all, beginning with Dr. Thomas O'Brien. Tom has served as the Principal Investigator for the TEDPP project. He is the Director of Research at the Center for International Trade and Transportation, a division of our college here at Cal State Long Beach. He's also the Associate Director of Long Beach Programs for the MetTrans University Transportation Center, a partnership with USC. Next to Tom is Dr. Hamid Rahai, professor in the College of Engineering at Cal State Long Beach. Dr. Rahai has been teaching, consulting, and performing research in the area of fluid and thermal sciences since 1988, when he received his doctorate in mechanical engineering from UC Irvine. He is also the director of the Center for Energy and Environmental Research and Services in his college. Finally, David Stumpo is president and CEO of the APTREX Institute in Point Roberts, Washington. APTREX is the American Public Transit Exams Institute, founded in 1993 to help the industry implement certification testing for supervisory and management personnel. He is also the director of the Southern California Regional Transit Training Consortium, which has had a big part in the TEDPP project, and he has long been committed to professional development in public transit. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here today as we complete this portion of disseminating what we have learned through the project. Tom, I'm going to start with you, not surprisingly. What first generated interest in conducting a project like this?
This is essentially a workforce development project, and that's what we're in the business of doing at the Center for International Trade and Transportation. We're interested in education and the professional development of the next generation of a particular segment of the transportation workforce. It's a concern and it's an interest of some of our partners in Washington at the Federal Highway Administration, who identified some money as part of the Federal Highway Bill to better understand the needs of the next generation of the transportation workforce. And we thought we were in a good position to use Southern California as an urban laboratory to try to identify some of the needs and hopefully propose some of the solutions.
My impression has been that the project took a pretty broad approach. You really attacked it from several angles.
We did, on purpose, partly because we had the luxury of a 3-year project. We also wanted to take advantage of the complexity of the region and provide some model lessons for the rest of the country. We have a region with a lot of jurisdictional complexity, which is something that we wanted to look at. How do different agencies in different cities and at the county level, and how do they all work together to identify workforce and training solutions? We wanted to take advantage of the fact that we have the largest port complex in the country, which provides a unique set of issues, the 5th largest airport. We have a region that is not only maintaining a transit infrastructure, but developing a transit infrastructure, which is different than a lot of parts of the country. We have some acute issues with regard to high school level population. We have a higher rate of dropout and students who don't complete high school or never take a college course. That provides a unique set of circumstances that we wanted to explore. And so, yeah, we were very aggressive in looking at, over the course of the 3 years, a program that identified the problem and then proposed model solutions essentially on paper to respond to those needs, and then actually pilot test some what we hope are innovative training and educational solutions that could become models for other parts of the country.
And we're going to explore some of those pilot tests a little more deeply with your colleagues here on the panel. And of course, we've done a separate video talking to Rich Callahan, another principal in the project who was unable to join us here today. But we hope that our viewers will take a look at that video as well, and the exercises that he did. What led you to the distinguished group of principals, you know, two of whom we have here today?
It's one of the benefits of being involved in this business, being at a state university and having good partnerships already in place. Hamid is someone who was familiar to me, Dr. Rahai, because he's done a lot of research in the area of transportation for Metrans. And Hamid had worked with Long Beach Transit on some projects, and in approaching Long Beach Transit, which is a partner with the university on a number of projects, brought us to Dave Stumpo, because Long Beach Transit is an integral part of the Southern California Regional Transit Training Consortium. Rich Callahan, whom you mentioned, is at USC in the School of Policy Planning and Development, and as you mentioned in the introduction, they're our partner in Metrans. And Rich has been at the forefront of leadership development training, not only in transportation, but in all sectors of society. And that was something that the Federal Highway Administration had mentioned was critical to the project, and something that we found to be true throughout the course of the project.
Could you say a little bit more about something you just spoke very briefly about as you gave that overview of the project, and that was how data was gathered, existing data was pulled together into a database?
Right. We know that there's a fair amount of information about the workforce development needs at the 10,000-foot level, at the national level, and at the state level. There's been a lot of research done on the needs of state departments of transportation. There has not been a lot of research done on the unique needs of regional transit and transportation agencies, the groups that do the planning and the groups and the agencies that actually operate transit systems. It's a unique set of issues. So the first year was essentially gathering information on what some of those needs were. We conducted focus groups, we did an online survey that covered the spectrum of transportation service providers, education service providers, and industry providers to get a handle on the workforce development issue from a number of different angles. We looked at what programs were being done successfully in other parts of the country, because we didn't want to replicate anything that was already being done. We looked at where the gaps were once we had done our literature review, with each of the principals involved, Dave, Hamid, and Rich, focusing on a particular area of interest. So Dave can tell you more about what he did in talking to the transit service providers. Hamid, who successfully ran a summer institute, was looking at the K through 12 population, and Rich looking at the particular needs of a professional workforce, senior management in transit and transportation agencies. So after the first year, we had a better understanding of what was being done effectively, what the needs were more broadly, and then as a result of the interviews, focus groups, and surveys, what the particular needs were of our study population in Southern California.
Let's jump over to you now, Hamid, and pick up on Tom's little introduction there of what really is a long-time interest in science and technology, engineering, education, sometimes called STEM if you add mathematics, at the high school level, and bringing college-level courses to young people at that age. Did that become a big part of your involvement with the TEDPP project?
Indeed, over the years, what we have found out about the high school is that as they are exposed to the sciences, but there are very limited opportunities for them to be exposed to engineering. And especially in the area of transportation, energy, environment, and other areas that they are exposed to, but they have seen this as a black box. Engineering has been always a black box for them in the high school levels. So this gave us an opportunity to really gather information, and with our summer program, we got exposed to such a bright students that they never had this opportunity as we engaged them in practical engineering applications and training and workforce training and other things. There was so much interest, so much enthusiasm about the program, and to get engaged and come aboard and learn all the things about engineering.
Where did you find these students? They were here locally?
Yes. What we do is that we have a summer program that we run, and we send applications to the schools, surrounding schools, mostly within the Long Beach Unified School Districts. And Long Beach Unified School District is one of the most diverse school districts in terms of the populations and the type of populations that we have. So we work with the Long Beach Unified School Districts, and they distribute the applications, and we generally distribute the applications in January or something like that. So the principals and the advisors and the counselors are all aware of this program. And then we also have private sponsors that come and sponsor the program, and we pay for the tuitions, the books, and everything for this. And we started this about in 2003, and then it was for different programs. It was a kind of fellowship programs to expose the students to the research area in applied research in transportation, in environment, energy, and so on. And then we gradually migrated to the education part of it, and that's why we got involved and we were so interested in this project.
You have this great acronym, HEAT.
HEAT,
Can you,
yes.
can you, I could put you on the spot and see if you remember what it stands for.
Yes. This is the outcome of our research. We call it Health, Energy, Environment, and Transportation.
H-E-E-T.
H-E-E-T. And it's through our research and through all the survey that we did, and for the first year especially, we found out that if we can develop a hybrid class that's accessible 24/7 to the students and work with the teachers that focus on 1 to 3 topics, it involves real exercises, real projects, and interactive exercises, and what if type of exercises for the students. It would be very attractive, and also in terms of the learning outcome, it would be very beneficial. And we have found out indeed that's the case. And every modules that we have developed for this has a special topics. They are independent modules. They connect to each other, but they tie in with the real life problems.
And I'm sure most people now know that when we refer to a hybrid class, you're talking about something with both online and face-to-face traditional components.
Indeed. We did a lot of research, and we found out that this approach, especially for the new generation, is the most effective approach, because a lot of time when we talk about the learning process, the peak learning process for the students are different. Some are good learners early in the morning, some in the middle of the day, some late at night. Providing this opportunity for them to have access to the material and to try this and assess themselves and then go back to the class and ask their questions and solve their problems, that was the best way of approaching this in the learning process and workforce training.
Anyone who needs to work in the environment of really any public school district is going to run into some challenges just dealing with bureaucracies, if nothing else. You had additional challenges, I think, caused by huge problems facing the state of California.
Indeed, that has been a major issue for us, because university before had a program that we could help us in terms of supporting high schoolers to take classes at the university. That program, because of the funding problem, is very difficult to implement right now. So what we have to do is that we have to raise funds. But I found out that the industry is very enthusiastic about these programs. Investing in education, investing in this area is a priority for a lot of industries. Not just environmental and energy industries, but almost individual, small or big industries. And I think that because of this, we have been successful in raising enough funds to run it every summer.
So you continued to find in the programs that were part of this project that same kind of enthusiasm from young people for, in particular, engineering?
Oh, definitely. One of the things that we found out is that the limited exposures that the high schools have to the engineering, particularly to some of the major things that they are exposed to. For example, when we talk about the bus or busing services, public bus services, they never knew that the complexity, the technology that goes into the busing services and the management of the busing services and the maintenance of the busing services. This industry is not the old industry. It's a very complex and highly technical industries. And the perception that they have is belong to the old industry. So it's really important for them to understand not only the the issues related to the transportation, energy, and environment and all these things, but also about the systems and the mitigation processes and all these things, because these are exposed to the name and acronyms, but they never realize what they mean and how they do the calculations.
So do we have an indication out of this that these young people are either more likely to consider a profession in engineering and technology, or perhaps even the ones who don't become engineers, that they will have a better appreciation for it?
Oh, I give you an statistics. We had students in the summer program, and generally at the end of the program, we survey them to see that who wants to do what. And I remember almost 90%, they will choose a branch of the engineering. But in one case that it was very interesting, that we had a girl in our program that went through and she did very well. But at the end she said that, well, I realized that I wanted to do engineering, but now I realize that engineering is not for me. So we have been 90% successful in that term. But at the same time, we also exposed students to realize that what engineering is, and in case they want to pursue something else and be more efficient and not waste time, it has been effective too.
Yeah, I think you did that young student of service as well, I would say. Where do you hope these kinds of programs will go from here, based on what you've learned?
Well, I think that we have talked to Long Beach Unified School Districts to be able to offer up to 6 or 8 similar classes to the high schoolers, so they can take that as part of the engineering classes or electives, or some as a substitute for AP classes and so on, to be able to get credit toward the engineering degree taking these classes. What we are doing, we're doing articulations, so when the students complete these, they can get credit toward one of the engineering program or engineering degree at our university. And others, I think that the topics are so broad and so interesting and so technical that there shouldn't be any problem for them to get credit for any other locations.
So you must see potential for this, not just here locally, but other districts around the country.
Oh, definitely. I think that once we complete this and offer this to Long Beach Unified, then we will come up with a way of offering it to whoever tie up to this and want to work with us. We have many good unified school districts around us that they are very interested in working with us and getting this opportunity to take classes.
Dave, the TV host in me said as soon as Hamid was talking about buses and learning about that side of the transportation industry, I should have gone directly to you, but we wanted to cover these other important topics. Yes. But now let's pick up on that. Why has the development and assessment of public transit leadership been so important to you, but why should it be so important to the rest of us?
You know, one of the things that happens, Matt, in our industry is training dollars seem to be the first thing cut when a budget comes down the pike. And what happens is we tend to learn internally or through on-the-job training, and sometimes we have to unlearn ourselves back to getting into the realm of new technology or new equipment. In our industry, a bus life is 12 years. And so every 12 years you have this new technology evolving. And so part of the idea of this program and working together with Dr. O'Brien and Dr. Hamid is building on the success of developing training for technicians that want to become supervisors and supervisors who want to promote. And at the same time, recognizing in our industry the ability to have transit as a potential career. Like Dr. Rahai said, that one of the things that people recognize in public transit is when you talk transit or buses, you automatically think driving. People forget about the complexities of an organization, from mechanics to GPS and technology, logistics, and everything associated with running a business.
So you also piloted a program. I know it took place at an institution not far from Cal State Long Beach.
Yes, and part of our Southern California Regional Transit Training Consortia is 30 members, including community colleges, universities, and all the transit systems in the region. And part of it is getting the data from needs assessment that build on the leadership classes that are needed for the future. And again, filling the gaps. In our industry, the American Public Transit Association is looking for the workforce development issues to become a higher priority in our industry, to be able to look at the baby boomers who are retiring and what are we going to do about the future. And so our concept was this. It was take what we do in terms of leadership, build a model that fits in our industry, in the transit industry, and hybrid it. And hybriding means some class, in-class work, as well as some distance education.
Much like Hamid was talking about with his hybrid program for K-12.
And what happens in the distance education piece is similar to when you have these students who want to access technology and learning in different hours of the day. Public transit's a 24-hour, 7-day business. Mm-hmm. And so students have the chance to work on school and education at a time that's convenient for them.
So clearly these online elements were just as important in approaching these people who were mid-profession or early in their profession in the transit industry.
Yeah, exactly. And some long-term employees as well, learning new things.
So what took place at, was it Cerritos College where you centered some of this work?
Yeah, Cerritos College was our hub in terms of where the training took place on the in-class portion. And we partnered with University of Maryland in our consortium to build and to do the distance education piece. And so they would get an orientation after their leadership class at Cerritos College, and then there would be a facilitator that would handle the online portion for students that may have had questions during the time that they're doing their modules. And so those two modules coming together with the in-class and the distance education piece is what builds on this program.
And this program was something, I don't know if they all contributed to it, but you had high interest from these members of the consortium?
Yes, it's been a gap that has been noticed year after year. And again, because of the funding issues, the ability to educate what we call sometimes the soft skills is that it would be cut. But under the consortium model, through an FTA grant, through an FHWA grant, ITS America, we're able to build on that. And with Dr. O'Brien's project, we're able to now develop it into a good pilot to see the successes that could take place to become a national model.
So talk about those successes and the findings. What knowledge did you emerge from the pilot program with?
Well, one of the things that was interesting early on is we actually learned something ourselves, and that was that distance education is not put it on the website and let people have access to it and you never have to go back to it. One of the things that we learned is you still need some facilitation. And as soon as we put facilitation in place on the second of 4 pilots that we were running, it was immediate in terms of how fast the students went through the modules, that they had somebody that they can share either a concern or something that would help us to improve our own modules or design. But the successes have been excellent scores. On a scale of a 4-point scale, we have averaged 3.8 across the board on our first 3 pilots.
Do you have any comment about the interaction among the students in the program and how that was either fostered or hindered by the online portion?
It's a common theme that comes back to us, in that learning in the classroom as well as in terms of the distance education is people make a connection in the classroom first. And they're always interested to see that there's similar problems, even though the logo or the transit system is a different place in the Los Angeles basin. And they became friends, and they get to learn and educate each other, but at the same time they were bringing in stories about their own experiences, and that provided a valuable tool to everyone in the class. And then when they did the distance education piece, we found that they were calling each other and bouncing ideas back and forth, and they were feeding back to us how excellent the class was.
So what else can you say about the lessons, the takeaways for our viewers who are from other parts of the country, other agencies?
Well, I think it's a real stepping stone for us to get into more distance education and to allow the platforms to take place so that you can break out to a national model easier. At the same time, having the in-class piece is another tool. And so we think that this element to become a national model, to become something that's useful in regions where you have access to colleges and universities and transit systems that are trying to put education in the forefront, makes it a valuable tool.
Hamid, even though you were appealing to a very different group of your target audience, quite different from Dave's, it sounds like that is something you could have said.
Indeed. I mean, what we learn about how to design these things, that's the modules that are attractive to the students. That was a major issue for us. We have looked into different way of delivery, different way of giving exposure to the topics. And we found out that if we limit our topics to 1 to 3 subjects, if we do work examples for them so they can see the work examples, if we expose them to the real life projects that they experience this, and then talk about the solutions and methods and issues related to that, that is the most effective approach. So the things that we learn from this is that when we put educational materials on the web for students to see, it has to be to the point, it has to be short. Short means 1 to 10 pages. That's focused. And then get them engaged in exercises and projects and what if type of problems that they say that, well, if I change this parameter, what happened? If I do this, what happened? And so on. So this is a kind of learning process for us. At the same time, we found out it's a very exciting and learning tools for them.
And did you also reach the conclusion that Dave did, which actually is something that we found throughout online education, that you can't just throw the content up there and expect people to learn?
Oh, definitely. I mean, as I said, that we review the first year of the project. We spent a lot of time to see what would be the most effective approach in doing this kind of educations. Just putting materials on the website, there are so much material on the websites and people go there. But then how do we approach this and how is going to be more effective? For example, I'll give you an example. One of the modules work is focused on carbon footprints and calculations of the carbon footprints for different kind of routes and so on. So what we did say that, listen, you take a bus route, which a lot of students take that bus route. And we go from this point to this point, we stop at these locations, we go back, and probably we do this 8 times a day and so on. So on a daily basis, what would be the carbon footprint of this if it's a diesel engine? What would be the carbon footprint of this if it's a gasoline engine? Now, if we make it a hybrid electric, what happened? And how much a reduction in emission we get? And we have work examples for them, but then the training would be that now we give you this route. There are so many different bus routes that they have to do the calculations. And then for this transportation system, what would be the signature for them? So it's very tangible to them. And since it's very tangible to them, they get very enthusiastic about it, and then they engage us in this, and the learning process and outcome was unbelievable.
It sounds rigorous but fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dave, what do you hope that others will take away from what has been learned from not just your pilot portion of the program, but the whole program?
You know, it goes back to a very conceptual thing that we've tried to instill in the transit industry, and it's the 3 voices. The voice of the employee in terms of dealing with their training. They want training, sometimes they don't get it, and they have to sometimes find their own means. So the voice of the employee is important. The voice of the customer, because if the employee does well, the customer feels the benefit. And obviously the third is the voice of the process. And so if we look at processes, and we put the process in place that enables a learning environment, and the impact of that learning environment, how it has an effect on the customer, we ultimately get a product at the end of the day that people want to be part of, and they want to go forward and make it something that is meaningful in their life.
I want to say something here. What we found out was the perception of the public was completely different. And I think that doing these kind of things will change the perception of the public, especially the family, the parents, about the transportation and getting into the transportation industry. Transportation industry now is so technical and complex.
Yes.
We don't call them technicians. We don't call them, they are service advisors. They are service engineers, because there are so much technology involved in maintaining a bus or maintaining vehicles. So it's much different than the old time that we had a mechanics. It's not that. It's much more complex, and also the quality of the job is much better. So I think that the perception is another thing that when we talk to parents at the high schools, that what do you think about the transportations, and they all had these perceptions, as they've said, of the drivers or a mechanics, which is not the case.
And that extends to the senior managers, who are now being asked to plan, develop policy, be finance experts, be human resource experts. So the range of skills that falls under the transportation umbrella is huge, which is a problem, but it's also an opportunity when you're looking at designing programs. And in hearing my colleague speak, and what Rich Callahan had to say about his experience, I think there's a couple of common themes that have emerged. Technology is one of them. It's a means. It's not an end. To quote Rich from the interview that you did, leadership is a contact sport. And one of the things that we found is that in looking at certain aspects of transportation leadership development, you don't want to do it online. You want to take advantage of being in the classroom, of developing a cohort of people that you work with in the industry that will take you through your professional life. That's important. That's a valuable finding. Another thing that I think you've heard is that articulation across the educational spectrum is really, really vital for transportation and engineering, which doesn't have a fixed part of a lot of curricula, particularly at the grade school and high school level. And that's one of the reasons we took the approach that we did, because if you can get the students in Long Beach Unified that Hamid's working with interested and able to identify what a transportation career means, not just a transportation job, it's going to benefit Dave's industry as he's looking to recruit qualified personnel willing to advance, and the folks that Rich was dealing with it's in senior management level. And it also helps the people in our business at the four-year university or the two-year community college to better design programs that are ready to accept the people coming from the high schools and to send them out into the workplace much more prepared to do the range of jobs that need to be done.
So we emerged from this project with a lot of knowledge, maybe even some best practices. But how do we propose that agencies that are under tremendous fiscal and other pressures institute these and make them sustainable? I don't know. Tom, do you want to start with that?
Well, one of the best things that's come out of it for us is the partnerships. Being able to have people to go to with knowledge and expertise in an area that may not necessarily be your own, but that you can draw upon to build a successful program within your agency is a big plus. So we've pilot tested the leadership training program with people from LA Metro, Caltrans, air marshals, the ports. They now know what resources they have at Cal State Long Beach, at the community colleges that are part of the consortium, and at Long Beach Unified as well. So hopefully, a lot of this grows organically, and that you've got programs that are developed that live beyond the life of a 3-year grant.
Dave, you already said something about the advantages of a consortial approach.
Yeah, and what happens is the power of the consortium is what enables the training to continue on. Is that maybe one smaller transit system doesn't have the wherewithal to train all their people at one time. But with the consortium idea is that you have sharing going on. And that's the great thing about the transit industry. There's a lot of sharing that goes on.
And that's one thing we did find. I mean, that the consortium works effectively. It's a good partnership that takes the best of the community college knowledge and know-how and the sort of the training needs of all of those transit properties together. One thing we found, though, that it's a place like Cal State Long Beach or other four-year universities may be in a better position to provide that distance learning piece. So we do what we do best. We identify our comparative advantages, and we get more bang for our buck across the board.
Hamid, you already talked about the role of industry and the strong interest that you found from industry in this kind of effort.
Indeed, and also I think that I always have been interested in partnership in a form of partnership in K through 16 education. When we say it's not just K through 12, but K through 16. And if we can put together our resources and identify the areas that we can work with the Long Beach Unified or any unified school districts, especially with the hybrid approach to this, it becomes much more efficient and cost effective to expose and to provide opportunities to all students. For example, if you we looked at these high schools. These high schools, based on the type of teachers that they have and so on, they provide different kind of opportunities. Not that they offer all kind of opportunities. It's not uniform opportunities at all the high schools. Each high school you go, they may offer this course here, and then the other high schools doesn't have the trained teachers to do that, so they don't offer that course. This is a platform that we can provide opportunities to all students and work with the teachers on this. And at the same time, it become more cost effective in doing so. And so we think that this is the way for the futures, that unified school districts work with the university on this, and then we can provide much more opportunities to the students to get exposed to these areas.
Dave, we're just about out of time. Do you have any final thoughts, anything else that you want to add about your involvement in the project and maybe where it's going?
Yeah, I think two things that stuck in my mind about the evaluations that came back from the students. One was, I would like to see my superiors take this course, even though it was a transition and succession planning course, which was very interesting because they're bringing back education that they want their bosses to follow as well. And the second was the ability to, not about keeping the ship floating, but don't miss the ship. So those were very powerful pieces of information that were fed back.
Don't miss the boat. I like that. Tom, obviously we've really had only time to tease people with what this project has been about and what you've learned from it. Where can people go to learn more? We have
a wealth of information on the MetTrans website and also on the CITT website. Not only this type of dialogue, but information that we have from a workforce summit that we held during the course of the project, where we have interviews with people who have other areas of interest within the world of transportation. The final report will be available online, and the programs that are developing out of this will be ongoing, and we'll be keeping the website updated as Cal State Long Beach approves the HEAT courses through the curriculum committee, which is very exciting, as the consortium, and of which, by the way, Cal State Long Beach is now a member, works to identify new opportunities to take what we've learned to new markets, as it were. So stay tuned.
Only getting started.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you so much
for
joining us here today, and for your key contributions to this project, the Transportation Education Development Pilot Program. My guests have been Thomas O'Brien, the TEDPP Principal Investigator and Director of Research for the Center for International Trade and Transportation here at Cal State Long Beach. Also, Professor of Mechanical Engineering Hamid Rahai of California State University Long Beach, and David Stumpo of the APTREX Institute and the consortium here in Southern California that has been a big part of this project. Once again, we encourage you to learn more about the TEDPP project through the various resources that Tom has just mentioned, and hope that you are able to benefit from the findings and knowledge gathered by this project. Thanks so much for joining us.